the super PACs are a cancer on American life. And now what we know is many people in those early states have received individual mailers from super PACs dedicated specifically to me.
Ouch. Is that like the ultimate burn? Hey, the more people get to know you, the less they like you.
Yeah, that's
human nature.
That was Jim Acosta this weekend talking to Vivek Ramaswamy and pointing out in some recent polling that that Vivek is actually losing traction in some early states, and he is blaming the super PACs. Is that anybody buy that?
He very quickly blamed the super PACs.
Well, and that's kind of part of campaigning, right? Especially, he came out really hot in that first debate. And so, if you come out hot like that, you're going to get some negative ads. You're going to get those negative mailers. You might get some commercials. And hopefully your campaign is planning for that. You have a response or a strategy. I mean, negative ads have kind of become the standard. So the fact that he's blaming his, what's his strategy to deal with negative ads? It's not working, whatever it is. I mean,
more negative ads.
More negative ads. And don't you hate that, John, when we really get into election season and that's all we get to? I mean, I know there's people.
If they're creative, they're semi-entertaining, but most of the time they're just plain mean.
Which race was it here in Missouri, maybe, where they just had different size, like flamethrowers and weapons? And it was
that was the last Senate race.
Yeah, it was a competition to see who could have the biggest, coolest weapon in their campaign ad.
Hopefully we can get away from that in the next cycle. But it's interesting because Trump is really, there was some new polling out this weekend. Trump is now leading Biden in 5 key battleground states. It's big news because just the extent that he is up. And then also these are states that Biden would actually need. Some of these states, I think 4 of the states were ones that Biden carried in the last election. So some scary news for Democrats over this weekend. Where is Trump getting this wind beneath his wings, John? I mean, he's tied up in court, but I don't see what's pushing his numbers up. And as someone who likes Trump,
it's, we keep using the phrase over and over again. I think it gets a little old for some people, but the ever-Trumpers, it just reinforces their opinion that the election was stolen, and it's a big, going after Trump no matter what. I think it just reinforces that idea if he can do no wrong.
Well, and I think, he's been vindicated in some instances. I think, a lot of what he had to say originally about COVID turned out to be true. And then I was watching this case unfold in Connecticut this weekend of these ballot stuffers caught on camera. And we're going to be joined by our friend Jennifer Bukowski. She's done a lot of work on election days as far as election integrity. So I'm interested to get her take on this ballot stuffing case. But, whereas a lot of people, we have a lot of extremists. And whereas you heard a lot of people, election fraud is a fraud. It's a total lie. It never happens. The elections are perfect. You've got people out there who were saying that in response to Trump, that the election was stolen. And here you've got someone caught on camera, basically, and the judge saying, yeah, there's enough here that we've got to, modify what's happening in the general because we think, yeah, something funny was going on here.
That was a Democrat primary, too, if I'm not mistaken, for mayor up there. So be interesting to see what happens on that. But yes, and one of those candidates was pretty upset.
And we like to say here in Missouri that we're kind of not immune, but that we've done a really good job with our election integrity. And I think we have. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't that long ago where Bruce Franks got a new election in St. Louis because of some ballot issues.
And he had to go to court, though, to do that. That was a 2016 primary race. He was running against Penny Hubbard in the Democratic primary. But, yeah, he had to go to court for that. And the court ordered a new, basically, election. It was a primary, and in the the second race, if you will, he ended up winning handily, and there was, of course, there's no Republican candidate in that district, so he ended up winning and ended up being a pretty high-profile representative for several years.
Lots to talk about today. I am Stephanie Bell, and you are listening to Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am joined by Columbia Criminal Defense Attorney Jennifer Bukowski.
Good morning.
It's great to see you,
and of course,
Counselor.
You've heard Brian Hauswirth. We've got producer Hannah in the house.
Hello.
And John Marsh. Good morning,
Good morning.
John. All right. And so today we will be joined later this morning at 8 o'clock-ish by Will Scharf. He is not only running for Attorney General, but he is repping President Trump. Jen, what can you tell us about what we expect to hear from him?
Well, Friday at close of business, we had a big development in the gag order case. He and John Sauer and Michael Talent, all very talented Missouri attorneys, went and joined Trump's appellate team to appeal the gag order in the D.C. case, and they did get a stay on the imposition of that order. So that's an early win in that case, and we'll be hearing the details from Will.
Interesting.
And can I chime in on that mayoral?
Yeah, go for it.
Mayoral, they got caught stuffing the ballot boxes. That was a Democrat on Democrat situation. So we're supposed to believe, though, that this just never happens, guys, especially if it's a very tight state or very tight situation where it's Republicans versus Democrats. Then they're really never going to stuff the ballot boxes, right? Is that what we're supposed to believe? Okay.
I mean, and that's an important point, Jen, because yesterday I think marked exactly 1 year from the election. And we're lucky in that instance of the ballot stuffing that, somehow there was a camera on it or whatever. In Missouri, we use volunteers to monitor the election process. Lots of people in the polling places.
And it's impossible when you have these drawn out, protracted, voting periods. If it's all one day, yeah, you can get enough attorneys and non-attorney volunteers to be watching everything like a hawk. But when you're getting to vote for 3 months, who can take off work for 3 months to volunteer as an attorney or a watcher on all of these boxes and all these different early voting places?
It's a really great point. Luckily in Missouri, we've got 2-week no excuse absentee. I know we will be recruiting volunteers, as will the clerks and everyone else to try to
And that'll
monitor.
be just at one location, though.
That's
right.
correct.
Right.
And the
much
they
more
don't-
manageable.
And they don't have boxes.
It's still more difficult, but it's more manageable. Yeah, and you have to show an ID.
You have to show an ID, and but you go into the office, and again, I've heard very few problems with people. And Breonna Lennon's actually opened the office up on Saturday, and I believe on Sunday several times during that 2-week period where you can do that.
And
So
she's come down, like, for example, she'll sit at the Ashland Library
Yes.
and you can go in person and vote, but it still feels like voting. You still feed your ballot into the machine. There's still other folks and a judge and other folks in the room. So,
Yes.
I feel good about our elections still
in
here.
Ashland,
Yep.
early?
Yes, well, they basically they'll take the voting on the road. They'll do it at the Government Center at 9th and Ash, Breonna Lennon's office. But like Stephanie said, they'll do it in Centralia. They'll do it in Ashland. I've seen that done before. They did it at the health department one time, and it's not always in the major. They'll do it in sometime. They voted at Columbia Mall. I went out and interviewed her, and I believe it was a municipal election earlier. So. But yeah, I want to make one real quick point, guys. We mentioned the cold case murder from Callaway County. There was a high-profile murder suspect, and I actually heard it on the scanner. I just couldn't tell who it was at the time, but very quickly I want to let people know. The murder on Dove Drive, and I know you're very familiar with it, the guy that was shot in the head.
Deshaun Houston.
Exactly. Deshaun Houston was shot in the head. There were 3 suspects captured immediately. They've been looking for a 4th. He was, I don't know if he was hiding out, driving. Somehow he was at the Lynx Apartments in Columbia on Thursday night. And he got a car. He got away from him there at the scene, got a car, got out on the interstate. They spiked his vehicle at Creasy Springs in the business loop. He has been captured. 18 years old, 2nd-degree murder, but they're still looking for 3 more. So that is it's a very big development. Very big development. I heard on the scanner, they just never said the guy's name, but I could tell it was a big deal. It is a big deal.
Our law enforcement has been on it the last couple of weeks. I mean, they have really, between cracking the cold cases and spike stripping these Ulta makeup stealers, and between some of these big murder cases, I mean, kudos to them. I know they're short-staffed, but really I am feeling good about where we've been, especially in the last month. Okay, back to 2024. I guess we're expected to get a big endorsement today. Governor Kim Reynolds is set to endorse DeSantis. Trump,
I think that's big.
You do? I don't know. Trump is big mad about it already. But,
That's why.
But
I mean,
she's
she's
super
the
popular.
governor of Iowa.
Yeah.
And so Iowa is a big deal in the presidential race. Too big a deal, in my opinion, but they get to vote first. And so that can set the tone for whether people's campaigns have legs, and it can encourage donors to go ahead and kick more in. So if he does very well in Iowa, and I think that he's really put a lot of time and resources in Iowa, then, it could maybe give him some momentum, although it looks like Trump's got a lock on it at this point, but you can't always believe the polls. You really can't. So I'm interested to see how these early states actually go, because Trump has not had the time to be on the ground campaigning in them because they have so many witch hunts against him and all these different court appearances. So these other candidates, DeSantis, Vivek, Nikki Haley, they've been putting in much more time on the ground in New Hampshire, in Iowa, places like that.
Yeah, I mean, and we're going to get our first kind of look at maybe where people are headed tomorrow. Let's see, today's Monday. Yeah, tomorrow there's some elections across the country. We'll be covering a little bit of that in the D.C. rundown. And then also Trump is showing up in court today and having to testify. Now, while he's voluntarily attended this trial for many days, actually over a couple of weeks here, this will be his first day on the stand. Can you imagine, Jen, as his lawyer, prepping him for this? I mean, no. I was going back watching some YouTube videos of the words and the things that have come out of his mouth. I mean, you've seen him speak live. I've seen him
speak after walking out of that courtroom in New York, where they basically are seizing his businesses there for no reason. It's just ridiculous. And he's showing up there because there is so much at stake for his entire family. And himself, like they're trying to make him broke, basically. They're trying to take away his properties. They're already under receivership. But I saw him come out, and the judge had made some kind of indication that stuff before 2014 wouldn't be relevant. And he's like, that's 80% of the case. And I just see the looks out of his two attorneys' faces behind him. And I'm like, it's obvious to me that they are not loving him saying this 80% thing, but this thing might not be totally accurate. And they probably had a meeting before they walked out saying, don't say 80%, Mr. President. And he probably said it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question today is what's his tenor, what's his mood going to be like on the stand? Is he, because he's kind of gone back and forth with the judge in this case, and he got called up to the stand last week for saying something about the court staff. And so I just, you think he is very bombastic, especially outside of the courtroom. But then I think of people like Jenna Ellis, who was very adamant, very bombastic on Twitter, and then you saw her take the plea a couple weeks ago and was very somber and respectful, and it was a completely different person that we saw there in court.
What about Rudy Giuliani?
Very good point, John. So, what Trump are we going to get today? I think we're going to get, Trump is always the same guy, and I think that's why we like him. I think we're going to get the same guy in the courtroom that we see out we saw President Trump surging in polls, and he leads Biden in 5 states that are really helpful to Biden. Battleground states,
Yeah, because these national polls, Stephanie, don't matter. They're like, oh, well, in a national poll, Biden's beating Trump by whatever, 2-3 points. That's irrelevant. It all comes down to these battleground states, and I was very pleasantly surprised to see the news over the weekend that he's winning.
He is winning.
In every battleground state except Wisconsin.
Well, and Democrats were also, I think, a little bit surprised, and now
panicking
yeah, for sure. So we saw big news over the weekend. Former President Obama's senior advisor, David Axelrod, he's well known, is out there talking all the time, and he says basically he calls on Biden. He suggests Biden might want to drop out of the race.
That's huge because he is one of the leading voices in that party. He's one of the movers and shakers in that party. For him to say so publicly gives the go-ahead for all the other Democrats because they all take their talking points from people like David Axelrod. So when people like him start saying that, the other loud voices in the party will start saying it too. You just wait, mark my words. And so it could be impactful and it could be unfortunate because who will they get to replace them, and can that person win in the general? Because I think that right now it's looking pretty good for Trump to win in the general.
It really is. I mean, Newsom is waiting in the wings. We do know that. But this poll, so in some of these polls that were out this weekend, it had Trump winning in 5 out of 6 battleground states. That's basically being cited for why Axelrod is coming out now and saying this. The other thing in that poll, the poll found that 71% of registered voters said they agree that Biden is just too old to be an effective president. Only 39% said the same for Trump. So the Democrats, you're right, Jen, they're panicking. They see these numbers and it is freaking them out. Voters were asked if Biden has the mental sharpness to be an effective president. Has mental sharpness and Biden ever been used in the same sentence?
No.
Only 62% of participants said no. And 35% agreed with that statement. So people are questioning his age, his mental sharpness, of course, and then the fact that now we're embroiled in a war and inflation is horrible.
Wars.
We have to get 2 wars, exactly. We have to get to this later. But I went to the movies this weekend. It was $110. Yes, Hannah, $110.
Holy cow.
5 people.
Yep.
We skimped. We shared a water. We shared a soda. We shared a popcorn, and we shared a candy. by co-host Jennifer Bukowski this morning.
Good morning.
And of course, we've got producer Hannah.
Hola.
And John Marsh.
Yes, indeed.
And Brian Hauswirth. And we are going to do a recap of these cold cases coming up. But first, let's do a recap of the weekend. Big high school sports weekend.
Especially for Southern Boone, right?
Oh, man.
Wah,
Go
wah.
Eagles. They had a really good season, and we'll be excited for them. But, of course, they lost to Blair Oaks. And I know I'm going to get in trouble because if I try to name everyone who won, I'm going to miss somebody. So we're waiting for your text, 573-874-9390. But I think Blair Oaks, Jeff City, Jays, Tolton, Rockbridge, Capital City, and Helias, I think, face off. Those are all winners. They're all still in, right, John?
Yep.
Who else am I missing, Hannah, already?
Tolton won.
My Centralia Panthers lost,
Sad.
but my California Pintos won by 1 point. It was a really great game.
Good. And the weather has been so lovely for football. So a big weekend. Also a big weekend for our FFA friends. We got word, Hannah, I don't think I fully appreciate the impact of what happened this weekend with FFA.
Yeah, so last week was the National FFA Convention in Indianapolis, and there were over 70,000 FFA members in Indy just for National Convention. And it's kind of just the annual big epitome of FFA. There's all sorts of classes that take place, all sorts of leadership training. The people who have been competing in their contest teams all year long, that's where they get to finally face off for those national awards. And they also name the new national officers for the next year. And here in Missouri, we're so lucky to have a mid-Missouri kid be named to one of those national officer roles. His name is Grant Norfleet, and he is from Mexico, and he is currently at Mizzou, and he was named secretary for the National FFA Officer Team for the 2023-2024 year.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so there's 6 FFA members that represent almost 100,000 or almost a million FFA members in the U.S. So
Wow.
It's a huge deal to be one of those 6. And seeing his reaction, there were videos posted online of when they announced his name was really cool. He was pretty emotional, and it was really exciting.
I haven't seen that yet. Let's get that posted to the Facebook page.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. Well, some other things you need to be watching out this week. It's a big week. We've had a lot of state news, but Wednesday, we've got another presidential debate coming up, which I know a lot of people are excited about. And then Tuesday,
I wish we were going to that one too.
I
It was
know.
fun when we went.
Humble brag. Oh, I don't get to go to this one, but the last one was cool.
No, we weren't. I didn't get to go to the last one either, Hannah.
We went to the first one.
first one.
My bad.
Remember
Sorry.
the Nicki Minaj drama that all
Yes.
happened on the same day?
That
but
was crazy.
The debate was really cool. And so I would much rather, I think, although the first one was cool, I think they're going to get even cooler as the field narrows. We don't have to listen to Mike Pence, thank goodness, coming up. But I'm excited for Wednesday night. And then also tomorrow, there are some major elections going on. We tend to kind of gloss over them because it's not in Missouri, so who cares? But I think it does matter. And so we've got elections in Virginia for control over the state house. Now, I think this is a make or break day for Glenn Youngkin. Everyone has been he has been kind of this golden child in the GOP since he was elected. And now it's really kind of on his back. Can you get this Republican majority? Can you keep it,
Well, he can't run again, can he? The governor in Virginia, it's 4 years, and then you have to sit out 4 years.
Right, but I think they've been counting on him to kind of boost these candidates and kind of as the leader of the party be able to, push them over the edge. And so I think his future could be shaped potentially by how this election goes. And then we've got an abortion issue in Ohio. That is going to the ballot. And I think we potentially have an abortion issue coming to Missouri in the ballot. Of course, Democrats have tried to make Virginia all about abortion. So where folks stand on that issue, I think matters and I think could say something about the future. We've got several different measures in Missouri kind of floating around and people are considering which ones should and shouldn't go to the ballot. And then, of course, how you message those measures, who it brings out to the polls. I think there's a lot for us to learn in watching Ohio, and I'm sure the Democrats are watching that as well. And then, of course, we've got the Kentucky governor's race also that will be decided on Tuesday. So And it was not supposed to be that close. And I think the last polling we saw late last week had it kind of neck and neck. So it's gonna be a big day on Tuesday. And so even though in Missouri you might be thinking, why should I be paying attention to these other states? I think it has a lot to say, especially now that we're less than a year out from 2024. Okay. Also, we are getting more information on these cold cases in Callaway County. I asked Brian, I said, do they have do they have a special unit designed to break cold cases? Because usually you don't break like 20-year-old cases here, like, really, that close together. John, do we know any more about these cold cases?
Man, I'd about defer to Jen on some of these because, boy, oh boy, these are, a couple of them. One of them dates back 20 plus years.
Well, and you've got this, you've got a 1981 mid-Missouri cold case that was solved earlier this year out of Callaway County. And now you've got, I believe this man was arraigned last week, Harold Eugene Dickens. He's 64 years old. The murder happened more than 21 years ago, and his wife was stabbed. Why didn't they look at the husband from the very beginning?
It's always the husband.
Yeah, isn't that the first? Like, how did he go free?
Usually I log in with my little attorney credentials and look at the probable cause statement, but with this particular case, they went to a grand jury. Oh. So all we have is an indictment. All it says is that he acted with deliberation before allegedly stabbing his wife back in 2002. So he's been indicted. I think, are they saying the arraignment is today? We'll have to wait and see, like, what details led. Was there some sort of break in the case? Sometimes people confess. We had that guy who put his wife in the garbage in Colombia. That case is still kicking around, or that might have finally resolved, or, some sort of witness coming forward. That's happened before with these cold cases. I remember one where, the lady had help burying, her ex-husband or husband or what have you, and then a witness eventually came forward in a cold case. So you need some sort of break to have momentum in the case to make a charging decision. Typically for prosecutors, they're not just going to reread the file usually and be like, okay, let's go for it, because their cases don't get better with age.
I would think, they're different. Science is different than it was 20 years ago. And then just the chain of custody and keeping the evidence. And then I'm thinking witnesses, this guy's no spring chicken. He's 64 years old. So potentially people who might have information, maybe they've died by now. So there's got to be a lot of challenges in coming forward with a cold case.
Right. And looking him up on CaseNet, I don't see a lot of criminal history. I don't see any. It's all civil stuff under his name from my brief glance. So that's an interesting aspect of this too. Like, if you look me up, you're going to at least see a traffic ticket. So,
well, and that's kind of if you've got a 64-year-old like grandpa looking guy and you're like, hey, what kind of guy goes out and murders someone and then just like lives the life of like
actually
citizenship?
They're finding through some of these cold cases with the DNA where they're able to track people through relatives. I listened to one of the women that is at the forefront of that entire movement, and they're finding out that happens more often than you'd think. That
really?
There's these guys that will murder someone and then go on to live a normal life and like have a family and stuff, and then they crack the thing with the DNA, and they don't think that these guys have been killing the whole time.
But do you think so? In that instance, though, like here, he murdered his wife, so it's not like they're like,
Yeah,
it's
it
not
wasn't like a random.
And typically with murders, it's
allegedly murdered his wife, Stephanie.
Okay.
Come on. It's
Okay,
America.
sorry.
We have a presumption of innocence.
Come on, Attorney Bell.
That from your favorite Columbia criminal defense attorney, Jennifer Bukowski.
Especially with these older cases, they're harder to prosecute. You don't have as clear of memories. And nowadays, you have so much tech that can tie people to the scene, so much tech documenting their mens rea with their texts, their voicemails. There's cameras everywhere. Back in 2002, not quite the same. There weren't nearly as many cameras. There wasn't you won't have data tower records to see where this guy was.
Oh, yeah, cell phones.
These cases from 2002 are harder these days than, but jurors are more accustomed to seeing harder proof. So we'll have to see how that all weighs out and how he pleads. Unless this guy's like confessed. That's happened too, where like in older age, the guys come forward and be like, here I am, I confess.
Why would you confess after 20 years?
I don't know. The guy, remember that guy that dumped his, where's Hauswirth? He would know who I'm talking about. He he'd moved to like Minnesota or something. He wrote a letter saying, "Hey, I or walked into the police station up there. Yeah, I did kill my wife down here in Columbia and put her in the trash."
Ended up in the landfill.
Oh my
Well, one
gosh.
of the podcasts that I used to listen to was all about deathbed confessions. And, people have lived their whole lives with this horrible, dark secret. And I guess they just want to pass away with a clear conscience. And so they wait until the very end to reveal some things and kind of just leaves the family to go, what the heck?
There's even people you can hire to come to your funeral and make announcements for you that you didn't want anyone to know. Like tell off your brother that you haven't seen in 20 years. Like, you couldn't be bothered. Just call me the last 20 years, and then you have the nerve to show up here. Like, you could hire a guy to come and yell at your family for you,
Sounds like some
or
third
read
world
some
deal.
dramatic letter or whatever. That would be interesting. They call them like funeral barkers, something
That's
like
amazing.
that. Yeah.
I'm sure there's like an app for that too. Like it could just like
An app.
you could record a message for
Hey
people,
Siri,
and
when
then
I
like
die.
and then like upon your death, just like deliver FaceTime voicemails
That's gotta
afterwards.
be a thing in the future. Like, have everybody's Alexas go off like a certain amount of time.
How to haunt your family digitally
Yeah.
for the rest
I don't-
of their lives.
We just heard about haunting from the Missouri Governor's Mansion on Friday. I don't know. I don't want to haunt anybody digitally. The one thing you need to do, though, is like you can pass on your digital assets almost in everything to where your family can get access to your things. You really do need to take care of that, right? Like Facebook, you can identify who has access to your account
Yeah,
once
that's
you
the
died.
feature, and I've done that. But
Now they're going to add this feature. They're going to hear today's show and say, now available on Facebook, post-death messages to all
Or
the
they put
people
us
in your
in
life.
Facebook jail over it.
Perhaps.
But they do always look at the husbands usually. So this is interesting. This guy's now arrested. But I've told Brant, if I get killed or whatever, don't talk to the cops unless you did it. Then go ahead and talk to them all you want. You don't need a lawyer. Just go for it.
I know. Oh, my gosh.
that would happen. But it's
I
just a
can't
joke.
imagine being married to a criminal defense attorney. I'm sure you guys have lots of interesting questions, and of course, Hannah has been looking forward to this morning's show because she is a true crime junkie and was
let's
excited
talk,
to
yeah.
talk. So, coming up next, we are. As we approach Veterans Day, we are doing something very special. The Salute the Troops promo. Veterans Day is next Saturday. If you want to thank a veteran in your life, we'd love to hear your story of your dad, sons, neighbors, friends. Please go to our website. You can go to the Eagles website or the KWOS website. That is brought to you by All Seasons Roofing and All State Consultants. So please share your stories. Also, we are meeting the latest Florida man. Hannah loves to tell us about Florida men, but this one might be a little bit different.
These are the best kind of stories.
What was the latest Florida man story? I forget. There's so many.
Well, there was one recently where guys stole a lawnmower and tried to go on a low-speed chase from the cops on said lawnmower. That's the first one I can think of.
Just not the best. All right, so the latest Florida man is Jeff Bezos. He posted on Instagram that he was leaving his home of Seattle to move to Miami to be closer to his parents and his space company, Blue Origin. And people are saying, yeah, so is everybody else. Between 2021 and 2022, 740,000 people moved to Florida.
They say 1,000 people a day move to Florida.
Really?
Yeah.
If we could get our taxes right, we could start to see some of those numbers and post some for Missouri.
We don't have the ocean.
Do we know when that started?
They're moving to Tennessee, too, though.
That's true.
Do we know when that started? Because I know during COVID, Florida was kind of the wild, wild west, so to speak, and that they weren't as locked down as other states.
You bring up a good point, Hannah. I only have the data from 2021 to 2022, but it had to have started in 2020 for sure. And I know, I know in Missouri, just the migration from urban to rural was pretty significant in 2020. And I think, but that's got to bode well for DeSantis. I mean, if he would just get off of this Bootgate thing and off of the Trump thing or whatever and start talking about just Florida, 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 because so many people agree with him. I mean, those numbers are 1,000 people a day, John. That is staggering. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
So I think if he did more of that, he would be well on his way.
It's a lot to brag about. Yeah, if it ended up being him versus Newsom, I think DeSantis could wipe the floor with Newsom, because guess where a lot of them are moving from? California. California is like emptying out, and it has been for a long time. My friends owned Newsy, which was a startup here in Columbia, Missouri, sold that company to Scripps, bought a house in Austin, on Lake Austin, where Joe Rogan and all these other people live now. And their house has skyrocketed in value. And they're like, should we flip it? Because it's gone so high up. Just all these people from Orange County, California, with so much money that the house prices mean nothing to them, paying cash for houses down there in Austin.
Yeah,
something else. And everyone's really paranoid that they're going to mess the state up by voting wrong. And apparently in Texas, if you're like, you moved from California, they ask you, don't mess our state up.
We just got a great text from Charles at 874-9390. He said, if Gavin Newsom becomes president, he will solve our immigration problem, as we will all be trying to flee the U.S. into Mexico for a better life.
For sure. That is. And with all of this latest calls for Joe Biden not to run, I am getting more and more convinced that they are positioning Gavin Newsom to run.
They only have a matter of, a few weeks if they're going to make that happen, though.
Yeah, they've got to get a move on. Also, an announcement on Friday that I think is interesting. Our governor is out with a book. What do you think about that, Jen? No Turning Back, G57. You can order it online, apparently.
Yeah. Is he going to do an audiobook with him reading it? Because I think that would be entertaining.
Cute. I like that.
I do like reading the politicians' books, because especially when they're running for another office, like Claire, there's Oppo research on themselves. I'm not predicting that will be the case with Governor Parsons' book. But, it's interesting for me to hear their story. And there's going to be talk about all kinds of people we know in this book. So it might be worth checking out. Yeah.
Well, and I think, Parson has such a uniquely interesting story with how he came to And big news of the day, Trump is actually on the stand testifying. Is that not, as a lawyer, that would be terrifying. The other person that I'm trying to get like in their mind is the judge, because he has had some not very nice words for the judge, for the court staff. And, I'm thinking of all of the media, like Megyn Kelly and folks, when they had to moderate him in debates, like what the prep looked like for that. And so just the judge having to get hyped up to shut him down, because I'm sure, the judge is going to want to make sure that he's portraying control of the courtroom. And I think it's just going to it's so difficult to shut Trump up.
Yeah,
You
but
can't-
there's
you-
only
you
so
can't.
much damage you can do, because he has been running his mouth this whole time. So this is unlike other cases where the defendant takes the stand. It's the first time you're hearing from them. This is not the first time anyone has heard from Donald Trump on anything, including all the stuff that is going on in this case. So being subject to cross-examination will be interesting, whether he gets, how instructed by this judge, who does not mind the attention, by the way. He's the one that's smiling in the courtroom when he let the cameras in for a few seconds. But, anything, this has been my big concern. Anytime you have these pending cases, then there's all kinds of procedural things that they can hang him up on, process crimes. And he could be held in contempt of court if he's not directly answering questions. But he's been deposed. It's not his first time on the witness stand either, I don't think. He'll be all right.
Well, and I think some of what he could say could potentially be used in some of these other pending matters. So I'm certain the other folks who are nervous are the people representing him in the other cases, because potentially there's a little bit of overlap. And if he goes off the script and starts talking about something else, anything he says today could potentially be used there.
Yeah, I mean, they have so much record of him talking all over the place, but a lot of times prosecutors say that the next best thing to evidence is a provable lie. So that's why, if you're being interrogated, you might want to zip your lips, ask for an attorney, and keep them zipped till you talk to one, because you could be like, yeah, I wore a striped sweater that day. And then lo and behold, you were wearing a solid shirt that day or a blouse or something. And they're like, see?
You're a liar.
She's lying. She's hiding something, So it's just, you got to be careful.
Well, and
yeah, you're right. They could try to use inconsistent statements that he makes against him in the other cases. But this one is about valuing his business assets a long time ago. And the other ones are about, Mar-a-Lago library fences and, the January 6th stuff. So,
well, and the other big news in this case is it sounds like Ivanka is going to testify, perhaps,
yeah,
I think
they
tomorrow.
lost those appeals. Unlike next hour, we have Will Scharf. He's on the team that just won the appeal on the gag order for Trump. But Ivanka's lawyers were appealing to try to, block her from having to take the stand. And that appeal was unsuccessful. So she does have to take the stand.
And what do we expect from her?
I think, she'll be in line with her brothers. I didn't prepare these financial statements. Yes, I can read financial statements, but they aren't like the accountants preparing them, And Mary Trump, of course, the niece of Trump, is that who she is? She's written books. She's trying to make her living off of having the last name Trump, but trashing the Trumps every chance she gets. She claims that Ivanka's going to throw her dad under the bus. I don't believe that for a second. So we'll have to wait and see.
But Ivanka's really been mum on the latest election cycle and kind of taken a back seat, although in the first campaign she was kind of out publicly. So I wonder, what we're going to see from her on the stand. Okay, here locally, we had a big football weekend, and I tried to name all of the local winners earlier, but we have a lot of people are still in the game. Mizzou hung in there for a bit, but a huge Chiefs win yesterday too, and I did see a lot from that. So that was very exciting. They're headed back from Germany here soon. What can we expect this coming weekend, Brian?
Well, obviously, it was a tough loss against Georgia because Mizzou played them very tough. But in the end, mistakes, penalties were very crude. There were a couple of really tough calls. I thought there was
bad calls.
Yes, they were. I mean that there was one time Carson Beck, it was intentional grounding. And that should have been a loss of down. There's no question in my mind. But the reality is there were too many mistakes. There were 4 times Connor Tollison hiked the ball. I counted maybe more than that where Brady Cook wasn't ready. I had a hard time hearing their signals, but they hung in there. They lost 30-21. The big news is CBS has announced that they're going to take care of and cover Georgia, Tennessee in 2 weeks. But CBS will actually be coming to Columbia this Saturday, 2:30. 2:37 to be exact, the kickoff. But
Of
they
course.
will be here on Saturday for Mizzou and Tennessee. What's
Yeah, so
significant?
we're the game of the week, even though we lost.
Well, it's a game, but it's a huge game because Tennessee technically still for them, they need to win that game, and they need to hope Tennessee needs to hope that that Ole Miss upsets Georgia. So it potentially
Where are the
is
Vols
huge.
ranked this week?
I want to say 15, right in there. They lost to Alabama, and that was a crucial loss for them. Although they did win the game last year, but for Mizzou fans, anytime you have Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson coming to town, Brad Nessler's never been here. He has never.
He's a big dog broadcaster.
He's as big as they get. I don't think people realize that. This crew that was doing the game on Saturday, and I keep seeing comments about it, people are confused on the Mizzou Tiger Twitter page thinking it was Nessler and Danielson. That was not Nessler and Danielson. That was Rich Waltz and Aaron Taylor. This is the number one crew coming to town. It's a big deal. It is a sellout. And look for some orange as well. There'll be some Tennessee fans.
I was going to say, if you're hoping to go to the game, you better find some tickets on the secondary market because it is a sellout. And
Yes.
This stat is really interesting. It is the fourth consecutive sellout at Faurot Field. That's the first time it's happened since 1980. So,
which is amazing. The 80 team I remember very well, and had some just tremendous players. The 81 team, but you would have thought that they would have had more than that. But that was a tribute really to Warren Powers. He was the coach that year. That 1980 team had a lot of success, and their losses were they were close. But it's a sellout, and then they'll have Florida after that. And I expect the Florida game to be sold out as well. But a big game, and like I said, Brad Nessler, Gary Danielson coming to town should be good. Hopefully Mizzou wins, but it's still a tough loss. It really is. They had a chance to take down the number one team and just fell just short.
couldn't get it done. Well, if you are staying at home and watching the game from home, you might be on the lookout for, John, a U-Haul van and some creative criminals there in Jefferson City.
Alleged creative
Oh,
criminals.
sorry. Yes. Excuse me.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, we got a guy who's been arrested and in the process of being charged with loading up a U-Haul at a Cole County home. Scott Adams allegedly told deputies he had permission to be at the house and clean out the Fair Lawn courthouse while the owner was in the jail. He also told investigators he was a relative. They determined that was not the case, and he is now in jail on a $25,000 bond awaiting burglary charges.
And the other thing about that's where he says he had allegedly says he had permission to go into the house, but the door was kicked in. So that's
telling there.
Apparently the key didn't
He was
work.
carrying heavy stuff out.
They gave him permission to do that.
Didn't have his hands free. Had to nudge the door open.
I mean,
that's
I'm
reasonable.
just thinking, like, is this guy just, like, looking up people who go to jail and thinking, like, driving
Well,
his U-Haul around town? That's scary.
We don't know the court documents, but, that is something you have to think about because in Boone County, a lot of counties that are in our listening area, they don't list the jail rosters online. Boone County does.
So you're
I'm
giving
not
people
aware.
ideas, Brian.
Well, but it's a question she's asked. So I do worry about something like that because I still am not sure who he's referring to as far as the person in jail, but it is a concern. He either knew it from online or he got word of mouth that house was open.
Well, they say, don't post your pictures telling people you're on vacation. I guess, like, you don't have much leeway if the county's posting your picture telling them, hey, this person's going to be unavailable to watch their home for the next little bit. I mean,
Unless they have a
you see
relative
the same
watching
thing
it.
on people looking up obituaries and going by and robbing people's homes while the family's at the funeral.
That's happened many times, unfortunately. That's the lowest of the low to do something like that, but it has happened. We've had that happen in both Jeff City and Columbia over the years.
yeah, we've had some. So be on the lookout for
Yes.
these folks. They're really creative, and whether they're email scammers or in-person scammers, alleged scammers. You got to really because I don't think I would even think to have asked a question if I saw someone moving some stuff out. I mean, if I would have saw him kicking the door, I might have had some questions, but generally I wouldn't go bother someone who looks like they were just helping out their friend. All right. Also, locally, we had some big news this weekend with some high schoolers and what else, Jen?
Well, Tolton football. They won
Okay.
on Friday. And then tonight, the boys have the district soccer championship against the Missouri Military Academy. not a super sports follower. I just happen to know that because my kid is on the soccer team.
Very
So
nice.
go Trailblazers.
That's really exciting. And then also some big news this weekend for a local high school kid who was elected nationally to FFA.
Yeah, local Mizzou student elected
Oh,
as...
sorry.
You're good. Elected as one of the only 6 national FFA officers for nearly 1 million FFA members across the nation.
And
So,
70,000 people at the event, and then you hear your name called as one of 6 on the exec board. That's huge for Mid-Missouri. I am
hails from Mexico, Missouri.
Mexico, Missouri, and so now a Mizzou student. Congrats to Grant. Very excited for, and especially for producer Hannah, a former FFA student herself.
Majored in agriculture.
The only thing
Just in case anybody forgot that.
The only thing
How's your farming career going there, Hannah?
Well, I deal with a lot of manure these days.
Oh,
so.
come on, Hannah.
Compared to what?
The only thing I recall from your FFA career, and I met you a little bit after that, was the picture of you walking the duck on a leash. Was that part of FFA?
I mean, kind of, sort of. I sold duck eggs very briefly as part of my FFA project in high school. And yeah, I showed one of my ducks one summer at the Audrain County Fair. And yeah, I walked it around the fair on a leash because they make harnesses for chickens and ducks, in case you didn't know. And yeah, a little leash clipped to the back of it. And it was pretty nice because I didn't have to carry a bird around when it was 110 degrees.
Birds are
You just
also
had to drag it along when it was
like that.
not keep it up.
Like that possum. Did anyone else see that all over Twitter? What game? There was a football game, John. Somebody's going to have
Was
to
it
text
a
us.
support possum?
No, it wasn't. But the possum got loose on
It
the
got
field.
loose on the field.
And
Yeah.
possums are so gross looking that they actually they somehow put it was like a harness, or they somehow captured it and they were dragging it. And I think it just wanted to watch the game, but it was all over Twitter. But what a
It
weird
was Texas Tech, wasn't it?
It was? Yeah.
I think it
oh
was,
my
yeah.
goodness. Just
They were looking for a horned frog and ended up with a possum.
it was nasty looking. All right.
But
Besides
possums eat ticks, so
that, okay. Well,
ugly or not, go
Yeah.
possum. I'm rooting for them there because I don't want to get that thing where you get a meat allergy.
because Jen likes steak.
Alpha Gal, is that what
Yeah.
it's called?
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
know a bunch of people with that, and that would be horrible.
It really would be. So, okay, we are going to put possums on the good list
Yeah,
for today.
they're on the nice list. For
Not
Christmas.
on the nice list or all of the.
Don't accelerate if they're in front of your car.
That's right.
I was going
They
to
don't
say.
carry rabies. Did you know that?
I did not. That's another
Possums
good
do
fact
not
about
get
it.
rabies.
There might be mosquitoes too. Let me check.
Maybe we can convince Hauswirth to tell his story about running over an armadillo again.
Oh my God.
Later this morning.
I've never even seen one alive, and my kid got his driver's license and ran over one 3 days later. On the way to pick me up
did
from
it
the
do-
event you invited me to, Stephanie.
Did it damage the car? Because the Hauswirth said the armadillo did a bunch of damage to the underside of his car.
Well, he also drives a tiny car.
Well, he was in a Bronco, and so
And it was
the car
a
was
big
okay.
armadillo. Huh?
That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Well, there's been a lot of damage done to cars because I have seen more deer on the side of the highway this year than I have seen in a long time.
Tis the
So
season.
Be safe out there, friends. All right, Hannah, what is coming up for What's Hot with Hannah?
Now, Stephanie, I know you're not
Okay, I'll take that.
Oh, you will?
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure I will, but it's fine. Now, Stephanie, I know you're not a big NFL fan, not a big Chiefs fan necessarily, other than rooting for, your home state
I
team.
mean, I'm not rooting for anyone else. I'm just busy.
And Taylor Swift has pretty much unified the Swifties
Yes.
and the Chiefs fans / all of the other NFL fans. The Kelsey brothers, of course, have been popular since the last Super Bowl where they faced off against each other. They have a podcast that's becoming really popular. The internet's just kind of in love with the Kelsey family in general, including Donna Kelsey, their mom. And again, at the last Super Bowl, she kind of went viral several times just for being that stereotypical, like, genuine, wholesome mom who, just happens to have 2 sons playing in a Super Bowl at the same time, which is nuts. Talk about some good family genes there, I guess. But now you can enter a contest with Barefoot Wine to potentially get to sit with Mama Kelsey
What?
in one of the fancy boxes in an NFL stadium on November 20th when the Philadelphia Eagles
Whoa.
play the Kansas City Chiefs. And a lot of folks are speculating, if you win this contest, could you potentially also get to sit with T Swizzle herself?
100%.
So yeah, Barefoot Wine is on their social media platforms. They're going to be posting about this contest, and you have to go to their post to enter the contest. But if you win, you and 3 of your friends,
3 of your friends?
3 of your friends
Whoa.
will get to sit in one of the fancy suites, the NFL stadium, and watch the Kelsey brothers duke it out, and you'll get to sit with Mama Kelsey.
That is incredible. I think I am
Pretty
going to
cool.
have to enter.
And
The other...
have you seen Mama Kelsey starting to get like her own brand deals?
Oh, really?
I've seen her in a couple commercials, like Without the Boys. I'm like, go Donna, you get that bag.
I love it. The other thing that I saw, and I thought it was kind of like for fun. I didn't really realize that the Eagles put out this Christmas album, and I think this year will be their second year putting out the Christmas album. And I thought, oh, that's kind of silly and funny and whatever. They're actually like really good. I saw a preview of the song and I was like,
Some are better than others.
The one I saw, I was like, wow, these guys can sing. Like, and it's unfair. I'm like, okay, wait, so you're like, 6'5", you're big, you win the Super Bowl, co-host, Jennifer Bukowski, Columbia criminal defense attorney. Good morning.
Good morning.
Producer-
I'm here on a Monday. Usually
Yeah, early
Gary
on.
on Tuesdays, 10:35. But
Yeah, when else do we get to hear from you, Gary?
I'm on Gary on Tuesdays at 10:35, and Randy on Thursdays, 5:05.
Wonderful.
And now today with you. So
Yes.
it's a privilege to be here.
Thank you. All right, and we've got producer Hannah
Hola.
and John Marsh.
I think Jen needs a raise.
I think she does too. Yeah, she's like on the full-time here staff. All right, let's
Yeah, I'm still parking and guest parking out there. So
that's a pretty nice parking spot
Yeah.
here at Zimmer headquarters. All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about this abortion data, Jen. I hadn't seen this article. It comes from some of our friends at Reason Magazine, but
which
they've
we'll
been
see later this week, actually, in D.C. at their big office opening.
yeah, they just got new offices. They are going to do a big event on Saturday, and we are headed up there. And you're going to attend the Federalist Society events this week as well, right?
Yes.
And Jen is our
Which I need
Mid-Missouri.
to tell Randy that I won't be in on Thursday.
Jen's our Mid-Missouri chapter president, and there's always a big event in January, which I know you're planning. And anything you're looking forward to this week at National Federalist Society?
Well, Barry Weiss is going to be the speaker, but that's during that Reason dinner. But she's the one, she left being editor of New York Times, and she's started the Free Press, and she's a really interesting, intelligent voice that I'm always interested to hear what she has to say. I don't know who the big speaker will be at the Scalia sold-out black tie dinner. Usually there's a Supreme Court justice that speaks at that, or like the White House chief counsel. That certainly won't be the speaker this year, but I'm interested to see if it'll be Amy Coney Barrett or who are they going to have speak this year.
So we'll all have to tune into Gary and Randy's show next week to get your full recap from Federalist Society. But yeah, Reason put out this article, and they were tracking, or I guess following someone else who was tracking the number of abortions since the Dobbs decision. And honestly, I'm kind of shocked.
I am too. What is happening where Dobbs is passed, so a lot of states have laws that already were triggered into place, making it more difficult to get an abortion.
Like Missouri. So let's back up here. So Missouri had passed a law, and they said, hey, if Roe v. Wade is ever overturned, then guess what? We're going to even more strict abortion policies. Missouri wasn't the only state. A lot of states had that. And so we saw, abortion in many states become more restrictive as soon as Roe v. Wade was overturned by Dobbs. So you would expect
less, except for in Missouri's case, almost all the abortions were happening in Illinois and Kansas to begin with. So when they had Biden's health secretary was in St. Louis as the ruling went into effect, and they're making some dramatic, breathless story, the Planned Parenthood website had already said, go to Illinois, because otherwise you have to come here 3 times or whatever. So
well, in Illinois, I think at the time too was proposing some sort of a mobile abortion unit that would just drive along the border, which is just ridiculous. But this institute that Reason is citing said that the estimated abortions for the first 6 months of 2020 was around 465,000, and for the same period for 2023, we're sitting at 511,000. That's what, 50,000 more abortions in the last 6 months?
45, 50, something like that. More abortions over the same 6-month period. So that's a lot, big increase. And I don't know why that is. But certainly, we see Democrats coming out to the polls in record numbers at the midterms and other things saying, the rights to reproductive health care. I love how they name stuff. Reproductive health care. It's like non-reproductive care. First of all, you're not reproducing anything if you get an abortion. But their abortion numbers are actually up after this decision, not down.
all of the whining and protesting and everything that, you couldn't get an abortion anywhere. They're getting more abortions than ever.
Yeah. So that is an interesting development, not one I would have necessarily predicted.
And Reason is pointing out that in some of these states where abortion is still legal, that they were actually opening new abortion clinics and like you said, Jen, kind of advertising to traveling abortion seekers, saying, hey, we're opening more clinics, come to our state to get an abortion. So maybe it's become easier for folks in states that previously were pretty restrictive to know where to go if you were going to go travel to do one of these things. And so that could be part of it. At the same time, abortion is on the ballot a lot this year. We saw Was it last year? Kansas voted. This year, tomorrow, Ohio is voting on abortion. Missouri may be voting on abortion next year. So still a lot on this issue. But again, this data is wild, and I hope they continue to follow it, because I don't know if it's, in my mind, my question is it a one-time surge, or is it, prolonged, and are we going to see that number keep going up? I sure hope not, but some scary data nonetheless.
Well, I have a story related to Planned Parenthood.
Okay.
I've been meaning to say, I saw a lot of cheering from folks on the right on Twitter friends of mine, when Israel took out the only Planned Parenthood clinic in Gaza. But, I'm not as excited about that, because half of the 2 million people living in that Gaza Strip are children. Wow. And it sounds like they need some birth control pills and some condoms and some things like that, because there's a lot of instability now, and they don't need to be having a bunch of teenagers having babies right now. And I think that's probably what's going to happen and continue. That's what has been happening, obviously, if half of the people in your population are children. And it's going to be exponential, people. And so, I'm not a fan of abortion, but I'm fine with the pill. I'm fine with the shot. I'm fine with, getting, what do you call
IUD.
it? IUD. Yes.
Any sort of contraceptives.
I think the young people of Palestine should be considering those things instead of having kids that they're incapable of taking care of right now.
Well, and I think that's another point you bring up, which makes the data even more staggering, that there are increased abortions, because I think part of the Democrats' plan, too, was to increase, and a lot of other folks, rather than, once they knew the abortion restrictions were coming, to educate, to do more education around contraceptives and to try to make those as freely accessible as they can be. And I think, in my opinion, if you need birth control, you should be able to get it in America these days. And so with that ever increasing access to contraceptives, it's difficult to understand why we still are seeing these increasing numbers in abortions. So
that is a good question and a good point.
Right.
Yeah. Well, maybe after the pandemic, people are getting out and getting busier. I don't know.
Perhaps. I was thinking they were getting busier when they were all stuck at home. I know lots of people who had pandemic babies. But
I hoped that would be the case. I'm like, oh, well, we'll have a baby boom. But I just saw, maybe it's my age because I'm in my 40s, but I saw a big divorce boom is what I saw. It was the busiest year for divorce attorneys ever.
I saw that data too. So
speaking of divorce attorneys, there's a little Britney news. I know that's another one we follow.
I love when you're on the show, Jen, because Hannah, with the lawyer stuff, always likes to tell me sometimes I get a little bit nerdy.
Nerd alert.
But Jen is the perfect cross between nerdy lawyer and pop culture wonder. She follows the Royals, and also she's a big Britney fan. What's going on? I worry about her.
Well, Sam Asghari, I'm trying to find the story. I thought I posted it here, but he has been warned by the judge. He filed for divorce a little over a year after marrying Britney Spears, after she got her freedom from her conservatorship. And the judge is like, look, if you don't show us proof that you've served her, I'm going to dismiss your petition.
And so what's that mean for non-legal people?
That means, once you file for divorce, you have to show the court that you've told your spouse about this. And if you don't, then it can get kicked. And apparently he has not shown, I don't know if it's his lawyers are messing up or if it's something that he has done or what the situation is, but he's on the cusp of having that dismissed. So you'd lose money and have to pay your attorneys for more time, I'm sure. But apparently there's a pretty tight prenup. He'd get to keep all the cars she bought him. But he doesn't get any lump sum payment. Apparently quite a few. It doesn't say how many specifically, but those are gifts. So those he gets to keep. But the other stuff, he's not getting any kind of alimony or anything like that.
I wonder who gets the proceeds for the second book she's supposedly writing.
Yeah. He should have maybe thought about that because I guess with that kind of a prenup, that's not going to be a marital property anyway. But yeah, she's probably making a bunch of money because her book is doing very well.
Have you read it yet?
I have not.
I'm surprised by that.
It sounds like it might be depressing.
I know. That's what, I think you and I had this conversation and I was like, in my mind, she's still that that Britney Spears from the music videos, and like I still think of her as like a pop icon, and like I agree. I think the book is going to paint her in a different light, and I still want to remember her like from her glory days, and
as opposed to a hot mess. Huh?
I mean, lately on the internet, but also with this whole service thing. I mean, typically when you can't effectuate service, you've got someone who's like hiding out or who's hard to find or whatever. It's not like she's hard to find. So what is this guy doing that he can't get service on her?
Yeah, especially because she probably has lawyers already that he knows about because he signed the prenup with them. So you can serve them if they'll accept service still. So there's really no excuse. Maybe he's having second thoughts. Maybe because he's basically his whole career is Britney Spears' husband.
Mm-hmm. And maybe he wants a cut
she
of that
met
book.
on some music video. Yeah, maybe he still wants to stay in the picture. Maybe he wants to have enough for his own book. That would not surprise me at all.
Oh gosh, John, I hadn't heard that she was writing a second book or having the second one.
That's why I understand it. From
really,
from the blogs and all. Yeah, that Brittany had good luck with the first one, got her ghostwriter and said, "What the heck? Let's do volume 2."
I would love like a Britney documentary. I think there was a Lady Gaga documentary not too long ago. I watched the Taylor Swift movie this weekend. It's fine. The concert thing, it's fine. It's a long, like it is. I didn't realize quite how long that whole thing is.
And a little pricey, huh?
Yeah, it was $110 for.
You paid $110 to watch a movie?
Yep, 5 people into the movie, and then we shared a water.
Oh, at the theater.
At the theater.
Isn't that online? You can watch it online, can't you?
Not yet. I don't think.
Okay.
But 1 water, 1 soda, 1 popcorn, 1 candy to share amongst 5 people, $110.
And 3 of them were kids.
3 of them were kids. I was shocked, to be honest, and I thought, maybe I should have just gone to the concert. Not really, because what are those tickets running, like $600? But I'm seeing these theaters full of people, and Taylor Swift negotiated her own price for the movie tickets. So I think the tickets aren't they $19.89? Is the price when you go, because it's a special Taylor Swift number to buy these tickets, but. I think a regular movie ticket is $10. So you're still looking at, $60 to $70 for a family to go to the movies. That's just, it's insane. Under Joe Biden, it's unfortunate because I think I'm going to be thinking twice before I end up back at the movie theater here anytime soon and probably be streaming it. And that's what my girls are like, can't we just watch this at home, Mom? And I'm like, I don't think.
Well, half of our family has said they're done with the movie theaters.
Really?
Gus and I still will go. But Brant and Blake are like, you can't pause it. The food isn't as good. The popcorn has not been as good as it used to be.
True.
And so
you got to go to the bathroom. You got to go.
Like it's uncomfortable. They just will rather wait to see stuff. So I ended up seeing Oppenheimer by myself because I couldn't get my younger son interested enough to go, but I wanted to see it so bad. So I've only done that a couple times my entire life. Yeah, gone to a movie theater by myself.
Hannah likes to go to movies by herself. We learned this about her, which I'm shocked by.
Well, it started when I was in college, and the friends that I had in my dorm and in my apartment, they really enjoyed partying. And Hannah is an old lady and always has been. And so when they were out and about, instead of me just sitting in my dorm room with nothing to do, I would go see like a late night movie.
And then pick them up.
Yeah, pretty much. When you
nice.
have the theater almost all to yourself, I'd bring a blanket, and that was just like me time. And now my husband doesn't really enjoy going to the movies, so I still do it every once in a while.
I like it. All right. Well, the debate is out whether you should go to the movies at all, whether you should watch it at home, or whether have you ever seen...
And you don't have to share popcorn if you go by yourself.
That's a fair point, because sharing the popcorn 5 ways this weekend, I'm going to tell you, it didn't go very far. Let us know, have you ever been to the movies by yourself? Is it something you enjoy doing? You can text us at 573-874-9390. We will be right
The day you put what where? Magnets, phone chargers, lollipops, and orange peels. Just some of the surprising objects that people got stuck in their bodies last year, according to the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Dr. Mark Siegel works in the ER at NYU Hospital and says foreign objects being stuck in strange places is predictable when more than half of them we've pulled out were sex toys. But he also says the factor of people poking themselves with objects, especially in the nose, ears, and mouth. He treated a 10-year-old who had a AA battery stuck in his sinus. Some of the items found in people's ears included a cufflink, wet tissues, a bug, a plastic sword, and a game piece from Battleship. Liquid items put in the ear included shoe glue, apparently mixed up with eardrops, lighter fluid, and tequila. And onto the nether regions, which you were all waiting for. For men, some of the objects included beads, paper clips, coins, a car key, a ceiling fan chain, and a wooden spoon. For women, coins, a pen, drumstick, a flashlight, and even a spatula. Some of the other non-specific items: magnets, bottles, crayons, wrenches, a vegetable peeler, a fishing pole.
Ow!
And action figures, which prompted one kid to ask, "Mommy, where is my Spider-Man?" And now you know the rest of that story.
I'm sitting here with my legs crossed, like, cringing.
That is horrible. I think that would be the worst job. I see a lot of these TikToks online, and people, like, the stories people come up with for their explanations of how these things got where they got is just...
Google objects and x-rays sometime and see some of the ones that aren't bogus and doctored.
It is embarrassing for everyone
One of my
involved.
favorite TikTok accounts, it's a paramedic, and he'll show a clip of something, like a viral TikTok, and it cuts to him, and it's just him going, "Don't even think about it. Don't just don't do it."
One of my favorites, I just saw a TikTok of a Halloween costume, and it was a gal, and she had like crepe paper all over, so she looked like a piñata, and her coworker hits her with a wooden spoon, and she takes a little squat, and candy falls out between her legs, and she says, "I'm a piñata."
I saw that one too.
That's real cute. So if you're looking for next year, I think that's an excellent help. host Jennifer Bukowski. We've got Mark Ellinger in joining us tomorrow. Of course, we've got a debate on Wednesday night, some elections tomorrow. And of course, Trump is in trial today, actually on the stand. I don't think he's
Soon.
okay.
He'll be on the stand soon.
We've got the OJ watch already up on Fox.
Yep.
We have this almost every time he even shows up. We follow his white Bronco all the way to the courthouse and then him out of the car, to the stand. But today we are going to bring you a little bit of other Trump news, a big win in court by a Missouri attorney on Friday. So we are getting to that here. But so we're joined by Will Scharf, former AUSA, current candidate for Missouri Attorney General, but also recently joined Trump's legal appellate team. But before we get there, Will, I was checking out your Twitter, and there were some crazy protests going on in St. Louis this weekend. What's your reaction to those?
Yeah, it's really a sort of a tale of two cities. Yesterday we had a wonderful rally in support of Israel in Clayton by the Clayton courthouse, the St. Louis County courthouse, that was peaceful. A number of pastors spoke. It was really an uplifting, lovely event. Then at the pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas rally on the Del Mar Loop, from what I've heard, apparently an Israeli woman was assaulted. So you see these two very different just approaches to the issue. That on the one hand, you have people peacefully protesting for Israel, for peace in the region, and on the other hand, you have radicals protesting in support of Hamas and going over the line in the process of doing so. Really disappointing to see in St. Louis.
Certainly, right here in our home state, it's just awful.
Yeah, right in front of a Ben & Jerry's, too. No shocker there, the company. Anyways, Will, I was excited when I saw that you and John Sauer and Michael Talent were heading out to join Trump's appellate team and to appeal this gag order that was imposed on President Trump in the D.C. case. And there was a big ruling on that in the appellate court level on Friday. Tell us about that.
Sure. So on Friday, a panel of the D.C. Circuit, actually 3 Democrat-appointed judges on the D.C. Circuit, stayed this unconstitutional gag order that was imposed on President Trump in district court in D.C. by Judge Chutkan. We believe that this gag order is wildly unconstitutional, that it's violative of the First Amendment. It violates President Trump's First Amendment rights. It's unprecedented in American history. There has never been a candidate for public office before who has had a gag order of this sort imposed on them. We believe we're going to win either at the D.C. Circuit or if it goes there up to the Supreme Court. But certainly Friday's news that this gag order would not be allowed to stay in place pending appeal, we consider it a big win. And we're excited about the expedited briefing schedule that the D.C. Circuit granted us. We think we're going to be able to get this done pretty quickly.
Mr. Scharf, we always appreciate you joining us live. 2 very quick follow-ups to Stephanie and Jennifer on the 2 topics you brought up. Number one, any sense on a time frame on a ruling about what you're talking about? In B, you talked about the different events, protests, if you will, in St. Louis. Do you have any thoughts on Wesley Bell announcing that he is going to challenge Congressman Bush? I think that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. So first, quickly on the legal front, we have oral arguments scheduled in front of the D.C. Circuit on November 20th.
Okay.
So we'll be briefing this up over the next week or two, and then we'll be in D.C. on the Monday morning, November 20th, to argue this thing in front of one of the highest courts in the land. It's pretty exciting. On Wesley Bell's challenge, Wesley's in. I've heard that State Senator Brian Williams is also considering challenging Congresswoman Bush. Cori Bush has been so out there, essentially shilling for Hamas. She has a lot of Jews in her district. I'm one of them. I think she's going to face a vigorous primary challenge, whether it's Wesley, Brian, or both of them. And frankly, I don't see how she survives. I think the mood in this area has really turned against her. I think she's been a wildly ineffective congresswoman truly just a disgrace to the region. And I'm hopeful that come January 2025, we won't be represented by her anymore.
We are speaking with Will Scharf. He is a candidate for Missouri Attorney General. He is also on Trump's appellate legal team.
Will, talk to us about your take on the whole Dean Plocker thing going on at the Missouri State Capitol and the allegations leveled against him.
Yeah, I was the first statewide candidate to call for Dean to resign as Speaker. What I think we've seen in the last couple of weeks is a steady drip of stories. And most troublingly, all of these stories seem to involve misuse of public funds. That's what, to me, sets this scandal apart from just your usual run-of-the-mill churn and burn scandal in Jefferson City. That both with respect to the constituent management software that he attempted to get the House to purchase, and then more recently with Dean's expenses scandal, where he was taking state reimbursement for things that he hadn't actually personally paid for, which is obviously not allowed and potentially unlawful. We're seeing very serious allegations of misuse of public funds. And that's why, for the good of the caucus, I think Dean should step down as Speaker until these issues are fully resolved. I know the House Ethics Committee is looking at a number of issues, including personnel issues, I believe, relating to the firing of his chief of staff, who may have whistleblower status at this point. It's a really troubling series of events. I've been heartened by how many Republicans have been willing to stand up to a powerful public figure like the Speaker of the House. People like Bill Eigel and Jay Ashcroft and Bob Onder. Yesterday I saw that Adam Schwadron had written a letter to the Republican caucus calling on Dean to step down. I think Dean has some tough days ahead of him. I know he's running for lieutenant governor, but if I were him, I would just be worried about survival at this point.
And we know that House Ethics Committee is set to meet again this week.
Okay, Will,
and the House Republican caucus is meeting later this week as well.
All right, Will, pivoting back to representing President Donald Trump, he is set to take the stand in New York in that civil case today. What is it like being President Trump's attorney, and do you have any concern that anything that he says on the stand could affect potentially the D.C. case that you represent him on?
It's really outrageous what's happened to him in New York. You have this judge, Judge Engoron, who really seems to have had it in for him from the start. There's a gag order in New York that we plan on challenging. We plan on appealing.
It looks like he's been fined $15,000 twice in that one. Is that right?
I think that's the total fine, but the gag order was recently expanded to include President Trump's legal team in that case. I need to be a little bit careful about what I say about New York as a result. But it's really troubling that you have a leading candidate for president in the United States being subjected to gag orders, being subjected to serious restrictions on his First Amendment rights. We've never seen this before in this country, and I think it's really important to fight back. I think this is an issue that, Republicans, Democrats, people who like Trump, people who don't like Trump, should, in an ideal world, be able to agree on. The First Amendment is really important, and when you get into this sort of election interference, it's just scary in terms of the rule of law, in terms of our republic, in terms of the Bill of Rights, and in terms of the future of the republic.
I agree, and just the hubris of some of these officials that are bringing these cases and then these judges entering these types of orders. I mean, who do they think they are? It's up to the American people who should be president next, but they all seem to think that it's all upon them to stop him from retaking that office and not up to the voters.
Will, go ahead, Will.
No, and I think that when you look at the timing and the pacing of these cases that have been brought against President Trump has said that this is all really about election interference. Mm-hmm. And I think the timeline certainly supports that. You had this leak from the Biden administration to the New York Times back in April of 2022, where Biden very publicly expressed his dissatisfaction with the fact that DOJ hadn't yet indicted Trump. And then magically, he got indicted. I mean, it's been over and over and over again that we've seen instances of, I believe, political interference with the normal prosecutorial process. And as a former federal prosecutor, I find that sort of political interference to be particularly offensive. That's not the way that prosecution is supposed to work, and it's really scary stuff.
It is, and you know what? Despite all the crowds chanting "lock her up," President Trump didn't do this to Hillary Clinton, and he shouldn't have either, in my opinion. But it's just so disheartening to see how the Democrats are handling this and interfering with the election, which is what they keep claiming that Trump did.
I'll say this. I think there's a lot more evidence that Hillary Clinton violated the law in a way that was criminally culpable than there is that President Trump violated the law.
Well, and
so I think that's an interesting comparison.
And we're learning over the weekend some new polling out that's even got the Democrats panicked. Trump is leading in, I think, 5 of 6 battleground states when put up against Biden. You even got David Axelrod out there now saying maybe Biden shouldn't be our candidate. But again, I don't really, in the last 2 weeks, other than this continued litigation, what's happening that's making Trump's numbers surge in your mind?
Well, I think that people see the world exploding under Joe Biden. I mean, this guy's been president for a couple of years. In that time, we've seen the American economy go into the toilet. We've seen inflation at all-time highs. People are struggling to make ends meet. And meanwhile, we've got two World War IIIs brewing, one in Russia and the other in the Middle East. I mean, people remember that under President Trump, this wasn't the way the country or the world looked. And I think people are just totally fed up with the Biden administration's incompetence. So, yeah, if you give Americans a choice of, the most successful economy we've ever built in American history, a pretty peaceful world, American deterrence abroad, or what we're facing now, I think it's clear why voters are flipping to President Trump. That poll you mentioned, it shows President Trump sweeping the field in all the battleground states other than Wisconsin, where he's within 2%. I mean, those numbers, polls usually underrepresent President Trump's support. They did in both 2016 and 2020. If those polls are anywhere close to reality, I mean, the Democrats have a deep, deep hole to dig out of, and I don't see how they do that.
All right, back here at home in our own state, you mentioned that the House is caucusing this week. I think the Senate caucused last week. Obviously, not a lot has been getting through the legislature, but if you could, impress upon them to address one issue this next session, what should they be focusing on?
I mean, I think education. As I get around the state and talk to Republican voters, education seems to be what's on everyone's mind. Whether it's school choice issues, whether it's the serious reform needed at our State Department of Education, I think that's got to be number one for our caucus. I've promised, if elected, that I'll investigate DESE. I think it's long overdue. That department has a budget of over $10 billion now, 1,800 employees, and yet no one seems to know what they're doing.
1,800 employees?
Yeah, 1,800 employees. A lot of those are in schools for disabled children that are state-run, but it's an all-time high for that department, and that number seems to just keep growing and growing and growing. The budget of over $10 billion, 1,800 employees. You can check it out in the budget documents. I promise I'm not making it up.
And certainly the thing that's not growing has been our test scores. So like to hear...
We've lost more ground than the national average since COVID.
Yeah.
But even though Missouri schools were on average closed for a shorter period of time than the national average, we had more learning loss than the national average.
It's sad.
So DESE is not only doing a bad job in absolute terms, it's doing a bad job in relative terms. Funding keeps going up.
It's time for the Morning Bell business news with a twist. Futures are in the green this morning. The market is looking up as it prepares to open here in just a few minutes. Okay, we've all been to those long, drawn-out meetings where they could have been an email. But I'm a face-to-face girl. Hannah, I think, disagrees with me on this, but I really love a good meeting.
Yay! Yeah, you might have a hard time convincing anyone else that meetings are great.
Well, I have a new way, and the Wall Street Journal came out with some tips here, and I think they are right. They said you got to get to the art of a 15-minute meeting, and I love that. And I have some regular meetings with folks weekly where I'm just like, hey, tick through, I keep a list, and we just tick through and just touch base on a couple of things, and I really do feel like 15 minutes on the phone or face-to-face, you can get a lot done. But they're giving us some pointers. You've got to keep your circle tight. You can't have too many people in the meeting. And I think a lot of people get
over-inclusive.
They want to include everybody.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Exactly. You've got to stay.
And then you got to wait for everyone to be there. That slows it down.
And they say you can't be all business, which is usually me. I'm just like, you still have to have some personality and ask people how their weekend was or whatever. But you got to also, with 15 minutes, you can't spend too much time on that. You got to stay on topic. They also suggest you got to prepare beforehand. Send around some notes or an agenda or whatever people need to know coming into the meeting so that way they can read up. So that way when your 15-minute timer starts, everyone is on the same page, ready to go. And then also you can stack your 15, which I hate when people say this, I have a hard out. We are about to have a hard out here, but I have a hard out. I got to run. When on the Zoom, people will be like, I got to go. for me, I think about things and I'm thinking it's 2023. Like, we can shoot people to outer space for funsies, like just for some extra cash. That seems like that's a 2023 kind of thing. We've got some new technology that Jen and I are going to talk about AirPods. Your AirPods can now detect the newest version if someone's trying to talk to you, and then they lower the volume. So you can, you never have to take your AirPods out.
Stephanie, you would hate that.
Yeah. I know, right?
You wear your AirPods so that people don't talk to you.
This is a very good point. I'm still debating whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we've got all this new technology, and at the same time, there are so many things we can't solve. One of them being hotels.
My therapist told me that it's pretty unhealthy to bottle things up when I'm upset. So I'm just going to quickly rant about random things that have been pissing me off lately for my health. First, how is it in the year 2023 that we can't build hotels with overhead lights in them? I just got back from a trip, brand new hotel, 6 lamps, 500 square feet. You. I'm convinced at this point it has to be some sort of inside joke amongst the hotel building community. One day some guy was like, hey, people are going to stay here no matter what. So wouldn't it be kind of funny if we just made it a total
Yeah. I have a theory on that. It's to save electricity. They make it so hard to get all your lights on.
And it's
so you turn fewer of them on and their electric bills are lower.
It's so dark. I mean, you and I have stayed in some hotels where it's so dark you can't even put your makeup on. There's not enough light in the room to see to put your makeup on. Anyway, the Wall Street Journal has an article out this morning as well about why hotels can't just agree on the shower. And I've had this too. It's you need a degree to operate sometimes they're all hooked up to computers,
right.
Whether or not the hot is to the up or to the down or to, sometimes I will sit there for 8 minutes, trying to figure out how to turn on.
That sounds like a you problem.
The shower. No, but I mean, it's just, you're messing
I'm
with
the
it.
fake blonde in the pair of us. I think you can figure a shower out in less than that.
But now the trends are, a half wall, a side wall, the water is clearly spraying out all over the hotel. And it's just there are some things that we just shouldn't have to worry about in 2023. And I think hotel showers and hotel lamps are things that should have been solved a very long time ago.
Well, Stephanie, I don't think I've ever been in a shower as fancy as you're describing, so I can't quite relate there.
And I agree with Steph. As much as they charge at hotels, maybe they could get some standardization or something.
Well, you're talking about lighting. The best lighting I've seen at a hotel, new or older, is the Courtyard by Marriott, the one in Jefferson City that they've just opened up. That's the old St. Mary's. I mean, it is you won't have any trouble there.
It's super nice. The one right here by Zimmer headquarters too, also, really nice.
Yeah, they just renovated that. Of course, that was built. I want to say 2008. That the other one was just built, but yes, they just renovated that. But
why
that
are you
is
guys
that's a big one.
Local hotel rooms, may I ask?
Well, when I have football, and I've on Alabama and Missouri that go well past midnight, I'll have to stay in Jeff City sometime.
And when the weather is bad, a lot of times we'll come up and stay at this one and then trudge across the parking lot.
Oh yeah,
Ugg boots.
I've stayed many nights at the hotel next door and walked over in the snow because the plow crews do the best they can, but the interstate, especially I-70 at Lake of the Woods, inevitably the trucks get stuck out there. So it's a matter of safety.
If the trucks are getting stuck, Hauswirth's tiny little car sure ain't gonna make it.
Exactly. So that's
Jen's kid hit a possum. It wasn't quite an armadillo,
yeah.
but he had a bigger car than I think you had, so I think his car survived.
Yeah, I understand that. They tore the bottom of my car up. I remember that. So that was an incident we'll always remember.
Give us a quick update about the Mizzou game on Saturday for those who missed it earlier.
The one Saturday or the one coming up?
The one coming up.
The one coming up. So Mizzou is going to take on Tennessee, top 25 matchup. It's a huge game, obviously, for Mizzou because they really have the opportunity to win out. And of their final 3 games, this will be by far the toughest one. Tennessee they've got a quarterback, Joe Milton, who's outstanding. Squirrel White, his name is Squirrel White, their wide receiver, NFL, probably a first-round draft pick. 2:30 game on CBS. It'll be sold out. You're going to see orange there, a lot of black and gold, but it will be the national game on CBS. And as John and I have pointed out, Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson are coming in to do the game. Huge crew. And it's one of the final games they do, ironically, because the SEC is moving their primary games next year to ESPN and ABC. They've got one more after this. They'll go to do the Rocky Top game between Georgia and Tennessee, but this will be the second to last game.
I hate that song.
Yeah, I understand. But it's a big deal to have them in town. And when you get the number one crew like that coming to town, you get Craig Silver, who's their director. Our listeners will know who that is. He's a Mizzou graduate, huge name in college football. He's the director. He'll be here. Jenny Dell, their sideline reporter. It's the top crew. John Siddell, he came in to do their basketball game back in January. I was talking to their guys. You wouldn't believe their number one crew for CBS, their equipment. Those cameras are probably minimum $50,000 a piece. I'm probably low on that. The microphones are expensive. Everything they have is expensive, and it looks good. It looks good. I think it'll be a big deal. Hopefully Mizzou will win, but if you can't get there, you can see it on TV. Of course, listen to it on the Central Bank Tiger Radio Network on Zimmer as well, KTGR and also KCMQ. But it should be a great game.
KWS.
And KWS, absolutely.
KWS. Hey, look on the bright side. Reggie White and Peyton Manning aren't playing for him anymore.
That's true, but Squirrel White's you're absolutely right. Squirrel White's really good.
Squirrel, is that a nickname? Is that a real name?
That's his name. That's Squirrel. You could Google it. Squirrel White. And he's a wide receiver. He is probably not as good as Malik. Well, I shouldn't say that. He's probably very close to Malik Neighbors at LSU. But this Squirrel White is... and
it's even spelled like the animal.
Yes, it is. He's a wide receiver. I believe he'll be a first-round draft pick. I really do. Probably outside of Malik Neighbors, I would put him just under them. It's hard to compare, but I'd say this guy's going to be a legitimate first-round draft pick.
I've heard him really compared to Willie Galt from the Vols back in the day.
Yeah, he's fast. His numbers are incredible. He's really good.
Okay, it is not his real name. Apparently.
Fact check.
Well, they call him Squirrel White.
Right.
Yeah.
His full name is Macquarius Malik White.
Very interesting.
I would go by Squirrel, too.
Yeah. And it's interesting, but everybody knows him as Squirrel. But,
right,
But it is interesting, but I definitely think he'll be tough. But I'm assuming Coach Drinkwitz will put Chris Abrams' drain on him. Should be a great game. Hope for good weather.
Yeah, I'm hoping we're going to be reaching out to the Columbia Chamber, and I'm just hoping to get some more insight on the impact to the local community. I mean, the 4 sold-out games, they said that's the first time Faro's been sold out for 4 consecutive games since 1980. But you think about the folks that are eating and staying, and even, outside of Columbia, I know I've had a lot of friends coming to town wanting to watch Mizzou. So really exciting. And then also the team's been traveling really well. Also, this year I've seen a lot of folks here from Columbia going elsewhere, and it just a fun atmosphere. I had an opportunity. I had an intern from the law school over the summer, a law clerk, and had an opportunity to catch up with her last week. And it was really fun because when I was in law school, of course, Mizzou was really good.
Yes.
And it was a really exciting time to just be on campus and just celebrate. And so to watch her be able to experience that, even though she's not super into I'm never, but it's an exciting, you kind of feel the excitement, and you see everyone coming to campus and everyone's in a good mood, and it just makes... It's fun.
And I think I love the idea of the Columbia Chamber of Commerce coming on because there will be an impact. But Stephanie, outside of the broadcast, just the fact is have CBS in here, the major network, not CBS Sports Network, the network CBS. I guarantee you they're going to be going over to probably Shakespeare's or someplace like that. We know that ESPN came in and went to Booch's about a month ago, and I wanted to report that. The owner asked me not to at the time, and I honored that. He didn't want to. He was worried it would be flooded with people, and they didn't have the space to accommodate everybody. But I could report it after it happened. But they're going to show, so the exposure for them to come in to Columbia, it will be huge, and I'm sure that clerk will be good. One other real quick point, 1980 was a really good Mizzou team. Warren Powers was their coach. John will know this. Pete Atkins will remember this name. Mizzou had a really good ball player that year. His name was George Shorthose. He played for the Jefferson City Jays. And John, I don't know if he still lives down there.
No, I think George he was in Colorado for a while. I had the distinction of being in Lamaze class with George.
Wow. Yeah.
What?
Yes, that's awesome.
John has the weirdest stories for
awesome.
everything, I swear.
That's awesome. But no, George was on that team and a lot of other good players as well. But it's amazing it's taken 43 years to have have that many sellouts. I would have thought that would have happened before then, but apparently not.
All right.
Tigers went to the Liberty Bowl that year.
They did. They went to the Liberty Bowl, and they played very well. Nebraska was a pain. Oklahoma was a pain, but they won most of their other games.
Well, we've got high hopes, and maybe we will be wearing black and gold on Friday, although we will probably be a mixture of black and gold and red again. Hopefully,
no orange though.
No orange this Friday. Well, Jen, we're getting some Trump updates this morning.
So Trump is going to go testify. He's not even there yet, but he is on Truth Social talking about it on his way in. It's going to be an interesting, explosive day, I think. But Trump on Truth Social ripped into, quote, biased Judge Engoron and calls Letitia James racist, evil, and corrupt in a rant as he's preparing to testify today in the $250 million New York fraud trial. So he's going to keep things interesting today. I'm sure he's going to be speaking on the way into the courthouse. He'll be speaking on breaks. And I'm looking forward to this. I just can't imagine being one of his lawyers in that courtroom. But Trump does not make things boring. That is for dang sure, does he?
Is tearing into the judge that's about to hear your case the best idea?
Yeah, probably not. But you have to remember this case is really weirdly positioned in that the judge already found that they committed fraud.
He already found against him. And I think, it kind of goes to his machismo and his ability to bring it to world leaders. I mean, this is the same. I tweeted this at Esquire on Fire, ESQ on Fire, a month or so ago. He went before the United Nations and yelled at Iran there, told them about what dictators they were and how horrible they were to their people to their faces at the UN meeting. He's not afraid to call things as he sees it and to speak up to whoever. And I think that's why a lot of people find him as appealing as a leader.
I think you're exactly right on, Jen. And I think the other reason people love him is that, he's not what you would call really measured. And so whatever going on in that head, it just comes right out of his mouth. And I think people really appreciate that when you look
his thumbs.
Yes, or his thumbs. But I think when you look at some of our other leaders, you hear one thing and you think, what were they saying in the back room? What does he really think? And I don't think you're confused about what Trump really thinks. And I think people appreciate the authenticity and just the honesty. Even if you disagree with whatever comes out of his mouth, at least you know where he's at.
Yeah, people like Hillary just slip up once in a while with their deplorables and comments like that. But Trump, he just tells you, well, Letitia James is evil and racist, as he had to
right? Trump is on the big screen on Fox right now, speaking before he's about to testify in the fraud trial. He looks very Trump.
He does. His one pretty attorney is looking good today, and I like her outfit. Very sharp looking. And she looks pretty, she's millennial looking, isn't she, actually? Yeah, I predicted that. We're going to be hearing a lot from him today. It's going to be fun. Other leftovers, New York Times tech workers are opposed to walk out today in protest of the return to office policies. I guess they don't like their, having to be in the office interfering with their times at various protests or whatever that's happening in New York. But the ironic thing is, like, the tech workers, they've got to worry about AI leading to the New York Times telling them to go ahead and walk out. Elon Musk, I'm a huge fan of his. You can now join the wait list because Grok, his new AI, which is supposed to be up to date, unlike ChatGPT, is launching. You can get on the wait list at x.ai to get into that new AI technology. But there is a poser account, if you Google Grok, that's fraudulent. Do not click on that one. Go to x.ai.
Yikes. Well, we have an interview here that we're going to play real quickly from Hemp Hemp Hooray, an industry spotlight.
This is producer Hannah here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, and we are doing an industry spotlight here on 104.5 News Radio 950, KWOS, and 93.9 The Eagle. Today we're talking to Kevin from Hemp Hemp Hooray. They have locations in Columbia and in Osage Beach. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm good. We're been really busy and everything. We been harvesting with some friends of ours that grew some plants with us, and we're going to go finish that harvest.
So it's harvest time for you guys then, just like it is for farmers who grow corn or soybeans?
Exactly. Yep. Some people have stuff out of the ground already, but we've had stuff hanging, drying for a week, and so we're going to go ahead and get that taken down and get it to start curing.
Tell me, Kevin, what is the backstory behind Hemp Hemp Hooray? Tell us just a bit about the business here.
About 5 years ago, when everyone started talking about marijuana being approved and everything else, me and one of my friends, we started looking into the hemp industry. Seemed more affordable to get into, and so we started on that route, and it's been very, very fast ride. We currently have 2 locations, one in Osage Beach and one in Columbia. Our products that we have are all across the board. I mean, we're not just a true traditional head shop or anything like that. I mean, we try to do more of a boutique feel on everything, but we have not only pain salves and creams and stuff like that, but then we also have some of the alternative cannabinoids, a lot of CBD stuff, few THC things and stuff like that also. We deal with a lot of farms all across the country, some up in Oregon, some down in Florida, up in Michigan, and it's just a good variety of a little bit of everything.
Now, Kevin, as you guys have been in business, are you finding that there's any sort of common misconceptions that you guys are facing at Hemp Hemp Hooray with potential customers that come in off the street?
One of the biggest hurdles that we've found in our industry is a lot of misconception about alternative cannabinoids, and a lot of people don't see benefit in them. We try to tell people that if they are a cannabis consumer or something like that, not to just isolate those individual cannabinoids, but actually expand them, add some CBD, add some CBG, maybe some CBN. All these other cannabinoids can get an entourage effect that really can make just an overall better experience. And depending on the issue that a person might be having, it can help with even more inflammation, pain relief, sleeping, everything else.
Forgive me if I sound a little ignorant here, but what is the difference between going to a place like your store versus going to one of the traditional, legalized, legal marijuana dispensaries?
Overwhelmingly, that difference is going to be the cannabinoids that are available at purchase. A lot